All right, let's talk about the gut and the brain. So, there's a lot of people talk about how the gut and the brain are connected, and they are tremendously. One of the big things that everybody needs to remember is that a lot of your neurotransmitters are made in your gut. Serotonin, dopamine, your body makes norepinephrine, epinephrine in the adrenals, which it has to take tremendous amounts of nutrients from the gut to produce. And so there's a lot of big connection there. One of the things I always talk about as far as gut and metabolic function and mental health as well as psychological function is, we've all seen it. So the easiest way to break it down is think about someone who's been hangry. If you or someone around you've ever been hangry, you kind of get it because, that person goes from happy, fun, energetic, whatever, to quiet, miserable, grumpy, completely bitchy, because they haven't eaten. So as the metabolic needs start to collapse, so does the psychological, emotional needs. They also kind of collapse. And when you feed that person and you restore metabolic function, all of a sudden they get happy and fun and calm again. And so we've all seen it. We all kind of understand. Well, one of the big things we have to kind of take into account is that the entry portal to everything in the body is the gut. And so whenever we start looking at it and being like, how do we fix this thing? A couple of things come into mind really, really quickly. So you also kind of have to understand, this is, again, when I argue about the calories aren't real thing, you have to understand that your body is based off a hormonal function. So when you consume things, sugars produce insulin function, proteins produce more glucagon function, and that insulin-glucagon function is critical to overall function. But when we start bringing things in, we've got to realize, okay, what is inhibiting all of these functions? So the big one's going to be parasitic infections. If you got parasites in your gut, you're going to have low probiotic, you're going to have low metabolic function, you're going to have higher yeast, you're going to get more bloating, more gas, you're going to get less absorption of nutrients, and you're going to get more blocking of it. The other thing is that, how much fiber are you consuming? Everybody talks about how great fiber is. Guys, fiber's main function is it blocks absorption of all sorts of things. The reason that fiber is so good for you is because it blocks or slows down the absorption of sugar, which decreases insulin response. It also blocks the absorption of proteins and vitamins and minerals and all sorts of things. So remember, it's not what you eat, it's what you absorb. And so that's one of those big things. So here, that brings us up to the most important piece of this. If your gut is inflamed, which 90% of your gut's inflamed. If you have a parasitic infection, your gut's inflamed. If you have a yeast overgrowth, your gut's inflamed. If you haven't, taken in all the nutrients you're supposed to have, if you're highly stressed out, your gut's inflamed. If you haven't been taking care of your liver, your gut's inflamed. So the number one thing we got to do is start looking at how we bring down inflammation in the gut. So kill the parasites, reset the yeast, build back the probiotic, then regenerate the gut lining. So this is where some of the peptides start coming in, the BPC 157, the TB 500. You want to throw in the whole thing that's in what we use as CLO, the GHK, the copper, and the KPV. We radically decrease the inflammation. We allow the gut to start healing itself again, and then we can start repairing the body's ability to suck these things in through the gut, and then process them and build them up and bring them to the brain. Now, if we're going to repair the gut, there's a couple of different things that have been really, really beneficial. Like I said, those peptides, BPC 157, TB 500, GHK copper, KPV, and we've also been seeing lots and lots of benefit from low dose naltrexone. So LDN, if you've seen that in any of the journals, LDN, that's what we're talking about. It's a really, really good way to kind of calm everything down in the gut. And so that's really beneficial. So I'll run through those peptides real quick. Then I want to talk about retatrutide real fast. BPC 157 is made from gastric secretions, and what it actually does is it helps heal, repair, and rebuild the body. BPC stands for body protection compound. So that's what it's doing. It's healing and regenerating the gut. TB 500 is thimerosal B, and it's basically a thymus thing, so it helps immune function. But those two help kind of restructure the gut, rebuild lattice work so the body can actually heal around it, and increases the body's ability to regenerate and heal. This is an important piece we have to mention both legally and for factual function. These peptides don't heal you. They help your body naturally do the things it was designed to do, which actually heals and regenerates the body. When the body has the tools it requires, it can heal. When it doesn't, it can't, which is why supplementation and peptides are so hypercritical. Well, also why we're seeing so much massive benefit from the peptides is because these peptides literally tell the body, hey, here's the requirements that you've been asking for. Here's the materials and the coding and the things you've been needing to heal, so you can go heal now. And so that's why we've had such phenomenal success with them. and why usually there's almost no side effects from them, and they're beneficial. But GHK copper helps your body produce more blood vessels. It helps heal, regenerate, repair blood vessels. It helps to increase the body's oxygenation function. Oxygen is the number one thing your body needs to heal and be safe. So GHK copper is a fantastic thing to have, especially in the gut, because your gut has to have all those blood vessels to carry nutrients away from the gut to the body. It's also going to have all that oxygen to process things. So that's a big one. In fact, the whole reason that coffee enemas work is because of blood vessels. There's a hepatic portal system that wraps around the colon and sucks everything out of the colon and drops it in the liver. And so that blood vessel system is why your colon works, why it's so healthy, and why coffee enemas help the liver. KPV kind of helps decrease the pain function associated with inflammation. So when people take these things for back pain or neck pain or arthritis issues or anything like that, that's why the pain decreases so quickly and why things actually start to heal. Now, I mentioned I want to talk about retatrutide real quick. Retatrutide is pretty amazing. The GLP-1s are great. The Ozempics, the tirzepatides, Mounjaros, if they're used properly. Most of them are not, and that's where you're getting your side effect issues. But when they're used properly, they're great. Now, retatrutide is a completely different animal. It's a GLP-3, and it's kind of like what those two things wanted to be, but didn't really get there. So it's like the high school version of the pro athlete, if you will. Retatrutide being your pro athlete. Retatrutide helps balance insulin-glucagon functionality, and that helps the liver actually process all of the fat. So visceral fat gets peeled off. The less visceral fat we have, the less inflammation we have. It breaks down something called interleukin-6. Really helps the body to decrease inflammation and heal all over. Once that function happens and we start balancing the hormone function in and around the gut, the liver is a massive player in the gut because it produces all the bile salts that we use to denature, emulsify, and break down fat. And so the liver is a massive player in this. Don't just think it's intestines and liver is the big piece of what we call the gut. And so balancing the liver and keeping the liver clean and healthy with things like Reta that can balance that insulin-glucagon function. Yeah, you're going to lose a lot of fat, but the other things that happen is as we decrease that inflammation, we can get more nutrients in. We can get more waste products out. We can balance everything in the body. And the easiest way to show that is it has massive benefit, not only in losing weight and decreasing visceral fat, but it's helped me and a bunch of people radically reduce our sleep apnea, which then further increases oxygen and further decreases inflammation. The really cool stuff is what happens with women who have PCOS, endometriosis, or bad PMS. We've seen phenomenal results. I tell the story a lot because I love telling the story. I have one of my patients who has massive issues with her cycle. And usually it's almost always the day of her cycle. Usually it's a little bit before and sometimes the day after, so up to 3 days a month for her whole life. She's had curling up on the floor pain from her endometriosis style issues in her gut, in her uterus. When she jumped on the Reta about month 2, month 2 or month 3, she called me and she was like, I started my cycle today. She was, but I'm glad I was home. And I said, why? She was like, I didn't even feel it. And she was like, I had mild cramping that's like normal for me. And she was like, but then I started, and she was like, it was the first day in my entire life that I started my cycle and I wasn't curled up on the floor in pain. So just balancing the inflammatory function in the liver and the gut has helped reduce all of the systemic inflammation for these people to the point where her menstrual cycle is now basically pain-free. This is a massive thing. So that would be one of those big things that I would tell you to start looking at. If you're looking at getting healthy for the new year, if you're looking at losing weight, that's fantastic. There's a lot of things we can do with that. But the big thing is that if we focus on, we're going to lose some weight, we're going to do it right. We're not going to, base it on calories and stuff like that. We're going to base it on, what we're eating, the macro function, exercise, like all the hormonal piece. That'd be great. But the biggest thing is you got to keep that gut-brain connection going, because what we're all seeing is that the healthier your gut is, the more balanced your metabolic function, your hormonal metabolic function is, the better your entire system is. And this directly goes to brain function, because when we start looking at, when we look at concussions, when we look at, some of the dementia stuff, what do we see? Well, the biggest things we see with concussions is decrease the inflammation by giving the body methylated folic acid, giving the body omega-3s, radically increasing oxygenation. So that's why we use hyperbaric. And these things help the brain. Well, the way we get them in is through absorption through everything else in the body. So that's going to be a big one. Dementia, one of the number one things you got to do with dementia is reduce the insulin resistance so that the insulin the brain can use, your brain produces insulin to communicate. If you have too much insulin resistance, the brain can't communicate. So again, that starts at gut. And so if we can start decreasing the body's production of insulin, again, remember, carbohydrates are sugars, not carbohydrates, because fiber doesn't count. Sugars increase insulin function. But here's the funny thing. You maintain high insulin when you have high systemic inflammation. So if your gut's messed up, you're going to maintain that higher inflammation. It's also going to allow more visceral fat to be created, which again increases inflammation. And high inflammation holds insulin levels high. And so now we have insulin resistance created from our inflammation, which from a lot of times comes from not having the gut fixed. So what we usually do with those people is we come in, we clean up kill their parasites. And again, if you have catching dogs, you have a parasitic infection. About 90% of the people in the United States have some form of parasitic infection. So clean up the parasites, clean up the yeast overgrowth, feed and clean up the liver so we can actually start functioning again. Then we can reset hormonal function, bring back in some of those peptides like I talked about to help heal the gut lining, bring in the amino acids the body needs and the collagen the body needs to heal that gut lining, start working on decreasing stress so that our body's overall sympathetic parasympathetic function is calmed down, and everything starts getting better. I talk to people all the time who've gone through the metabolic reset that we do, and they're like, man, I feel better than I've ever felt my entire life. It's like, well, you should. This is the first time that your hormones have been balanced. First time you have all the vitamins, all the methylated B vitamins, all the CoQ10, all that, the glutathione. It's the first time you've had all of your minerals you're supposed to have. It's the first time your inflammation's been reduced and balanced. And the first time ever for most people, including myself when I started doing it, that your insulin glucagon ratios are finally balanced because of the retatrutide. So there's a whole bunch of different things that we can put together. But if you're looking at how to get yourself healthy, how to do long-term health, how to maintain longevity, feeling as good as you can for as long as you can, we got to focus on the gut. And this isn't just taking probiotics. Probiotics are actually going to do you zero good if you have a parasitic infection. So you've got to kind of start going through it and be like, okay, how do I clean these little things up? The problem with doing a good parasitic cleanse is that most people are going to end up with detox reactions. You're going to feel like you have the flu, high anxiety, low back pain, things like that. You've got to clear the kidneys and the liver to process all the waste out. So if you've got bad stuff, parasites, yeast, whatever in the gut that you need out, you've got to clear an exit portal out. So that's the thing. So like, think about the major highways, like in Dallas, in North Dallas, one of the major highways is the Dallas Tollway. If that gets blocked, all the cars back up and you can't go anywhere. So if you're trying to get out of the city, you can't because the roads are blocked out. So think about that. If your liver is gummed up, if your kidneys are jammed up and they haven't been flushed out, you kill all this stuff in the gut and you're like, okay, get out of here. And it can't. And so you have a detox reaction. So before you guys start running down any parasitic stuff or any of these deep cleanses, make sure that you get your kidneys and your liver ready to go first. So when we start looking at the gut, it's a giant, super important thing. Make sure that you're looking at it from a holistic function because it's not just one thing. It affects everything in the body. So as you're trying to get things out, what are the detox pathways? Skin, liver, kidneys. You got to make sure that those are ready to go, which is why one of the best things you can do for heavy metals and all sorts of detox is a sauna. So, but anyway, we'll get some more of this stuff there. This is basically what I've been doing for 20 years. So I can talk about this for 5 hours. But if you guys have any other questions, hit us up. If you're trying to get healthy for the new year, this is a great thing to start with. Usually it takes about 2 to 3 months to get people where they really need to be. Hit us up. We can work with you guys, but make sure if you're doing detoxes like this, you guys focus on that stuff because it is super duper important. And your entire pathway to health, psychological, mental, everything goes through the gut. So start there and everything else kind of follows. If you guys have any questions, hit us up. Have a fabulous day.